Thank you. Thank you. We are starting this session. The panel is Global Compact Objective 19, create conditions for migrants and diasporas to fully contribute to sustainable development in all countries. So a few words that need to be said to expand on the words that are used in the title and in the GCM, the Global Compact on Migration Objective 19. First, the Global Compact on Migration itself. As you know, this was negotiated following the refugees and migrants crisis 2015, lots of negotiations 2018. It was actually adopted as there were two compacts were formed, the Global Compact on Migrants or Migration, and then Global Compact on Refugees. And the Global Compact on Migration was the harder part because for refugees, there is the Geneva Convention and all that, and you know that people need support when they are facing persecution or there is fragility and violence in the country. In the case of migration, there isn't an easy way to say why foreigners should come and work in my country kind of thing. It's not easy. Actually, that leads to a lot of irregularity, and irregularity of migration not only causes death, but it also has all sorts of distortionary impact on the people themselves, on what they make, abuses. For the host country, there are problems. For the sending country, there are problems. It's really, so that is how the GCM, the Global Compact on Migration, was negotiated. And the main sort of goal of the Global Compact on Migration was to promote safe, orderly, and regular migration. Safe, orderly, and regular migration. As we know, I mean, that then migration is in a way perhaps the that must precede remittances, or as I said in my intervention on the first day, sometimes remittances, actually many times remittances might be the reason why migration is motivated by, and that's why people migrate, to be able to send money home and help the family back home, right? So that is sort of the setting the stage for this session. And the Global Compact on Compact Objective 19 is to create conditions for migrants and diasporas to fully contribute to sustainable development in all countries with an emphasis on sending countries, receiving countries, transit countries. And the part that we have not discussed enough, I think, in this forum, because we have focused on remittances, is also what can host country, meaning source countries for remittances, host countries for migrants, what can they do? Anyway, I will leave that to the panelists to discuss, but here we have an eminent group of 3 panelists, and I'll introduce them shortly. But I want to also say that, just before the Global Compact on Migration, 2015, there was also the Sustainable Development Goals that were negotiated, and 2013, 2014, I remember the migration community, many of us were involved in that process. We were wondering, the first set of Millennium Development Goals in the year 2000 that was negotiated did not mention the word migrants or migration. So when we went into the thinking about the post-2015 development goals, the word Sustainable Development Goals wasn't there yet. It evolved. At that time, we were thinking what sort of migration indicators could be there in the post-2015 development goals. And happy to report, and you all know this, you have heard it already, there are many, many indicators that are there. There are now, the press release that has gone out from, I think, from the G20, GPFI, on the, to mark the International Day of Family Remittances, has a paragraph, the 3rd paragraph, you probably have copies of that, all of you, which says that migrant remittances help achieving SDGs, such as SDG 1, no poverty, SDG 2, zero hunger, SDG 3, good health and well-being, SDG 4, SDG 5, SDG 6, 11, 13, 10, 12, 17. So, huge impact between remittances and SDGs. And then there are 3 specific SDG indicators that we are monitoring. One is to reduce remittance cost. You have heard about it. This SDG indicator 10.C.1. The other is to reduce worker paid recruitment cost. This SDG indicator 10.7.1. And then there is also remittances as a means of implementation. Together with ODA, together with FDI, remittances are there, and there is a goal, indicator 17.2.3, to improve the volume of remittances, to increase the volume of remittances. So remittances are firmly in the development agenda, in the SDG agenda, and this session is about how can we create the right kind of conditions to harness diaspora resources that actually goes beyond remittances. And there are 9 links that I had mentioned before: remittances, investment, skills, technology transfer, trade, tourism, philanthropy, and values. We are going to focus on some elements of it, but tangible things that we can talk about. So with that, the panelists we have today are my colleagues. I have 3 of them sitting right here. Very happy to report that we have them. Dr. Shem Odo, my apologies for making a mess of the last name. Ocho Odo. Dr. Shem, I'm going to call you Dr. Shem. He's the president of and a global chair of Kenyan Diaspora Alliance. We also have Alessandra Casassa. She is a manager in UNDP Development Program. And we also have Mr. Antonio Querido, manager in FAO. And the questions that we going to talk about are what diasporas need versus what diasporas want in their engagement on SDGs, for example. And is there a difference? And how can we leverage their commitment in a strategic way so that their communities and countries of origin can benefit? Their communities where they are and the countries of origin also benefit. The second is how to scale up the scattered initiatives everywhere and small-scale initiatives. How can we scale them up for big impact? So those are the 2 questions. And with that, I would like to invite first Dr. Shem and to hear your views, and then we will go in that order. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dilip. If you permit, before I comment, allow me to, maybe on behalf of the Kenya Diaspora Alliance and the larger Kenyan diaspora community, compliment Pedro, David, and the other colleagues for the fantastic job they have done, and for picking on Kenya in particular to be the first country in sub-Saharan Africa to host this event. We don't take it for granted. Thank you. Thank you very much. Karibuni, as we say in Swahili. If I was to say only one word, I would stop at trust. What is it that the diaspora need to have the trust restored? And I'm cognizant of the fact that eminent speakers before us coming towards the tail end, much of the work has been done for us. But I cannot fail to reiterate more the aspect of trust. I'm also alive to the fact that Objective 19, G in particular, raises issues. We've been talking money, investments, and all, but that at sub-item G talks of also diaspora's participation in the political space. And it's in that regard that I want to say, as Kenya, we're very proud that diasporas are able to vote. Not sufficiently, but we've had to push that up to the Supreme Court for them to vote. Representation is still dicey. I'm glad colleagues from Cape Verde, Algeria, I understand have representatives in parliament. And we are hoping that Kenya too is going to follow this, and others will do the same. That's one way of diaspora being on the decision-making table, is one of the ways to restore their trust. But I'm equally alive to the objectives talking about improving the environment for diasporas, not only to contribute to their source, but also host countries. I do know, I can't belabor more on this, the aspect of regularizing the undocumented diasporas in the developed parts of the world is not an easy issue, But please, when I listened very carefully to our moderator on the first day, he said, if this happened, perhaps we could unlock another $20 billion, if I got it right. So please, if there are ways to do this in a regulated manner, it would be much appreciated. Maybe finally, just to indicate that as Kenya Diaspora Alliance and Africa Diaspora Alliance by extension, we are at the booth and happy to share more thoughts. We were in Abuja a month ago with the second Global Africa Diaspora Symposium, and we look forward to engaging more. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer, GFRID, the World Bank, but also the Office of the Special Advisor for Africa for organizing this session. Thanks for having UNDP here. It's a difficult question, the one you asked. What does the diaspora want, or what does it need, right? And I'm not going to go on the issue of trust, which Dr. Sham has already covered extensively, and I think is an important issue. But I would go by saying that we need to interrogate the diaspora, right? We need to really understand what the diaspora migrants in other countries look like. They are not an homogeneous force. It's not monolithic, right? We have diaspora that are segmented along the lines of different legal status, socio-economic. Their political capital is also very different in different contexts. And their links with their home communities, home countries is also very different. So we need, first and foremost, we in UNDP, we believe there is a need to create institutional platform where that conversation actually happens, where that exchange happens. The potential of diaspora investment in their home countries and home community is humongous. And it's not just about remittances. This is about skills that can be brought back in. This is about engagement in SMEs. I mean, we can go on and on about talking about the potential of diaspora reinvestment in their home countries. But here in Africa, and I'm talking from an Africa perspective, we really don't know. We really don't know what they need and what they want. There's a whole gamut of different policies that can be put in place to attract them back, to attract skills, to attract financing, to attract investments in particularly small and medium enterprises, but we need to better understand, we need to have a better sense, because the potential for sustainable development are enormous. I want to conclude just by saying that in UNDP we have already experience in engaging with the diaspora. I want to bring an example from outside Africa. In Moldova, for example, we have established a platform. It's a programmatic initiative whereby we have set up a mechanism for engaging with the diaspora to have a better sense of what they need and what they want, to have much more information about what they can reinvest back in their communities, capacities at local level governments, for example. How can local level governments engage with the diaspora? They need capacity themselves. We have set up platform like Hometown or sort of a platform around township of origin that can engage with diaspora abroad, and mechanisms for reinvesting, so matching funds, for example, for diaspora to re-engage. And these are examples that can be brought to scale, then that can actually be replicated in the Africa context, and this is something that we are now currently exploring.
Thank you. I also join my voice to thank the organizer. Can you hear me? Particularly GFRID, the World Bank, but also the Office of the the Special Advisor on Africa, for inviting FAO to be part of this important conversation on creating ways for us to see how the diaspora and the migrants can fully participate in the sustainable development of all countries. What your question, as Alexander has mentioned, is a tough one, because the diaspora is diverse. Diaspora is quite, have the complexities. So it is, the list of wants and needs can be a quite long one. But I would say that what diaspora would want is for their voice to be heard. How can we bring the diaspora to be part of the consultations of the decision-making process at their home countries? So their aspirations, but also their needs can be maximized on the sustainable development. How this can be organized? I think a forum like this one, in terms of policy dialogues, the consultations that are important, so the diaspora can fully participate in these processes. I also strongly believe that we have to look at diaspora as development partners. It's not only about sending their remittance. Diaspora needs to be seen as an important partner in the development process of the countries of origin. We have seen here and throughout these 3 days, important discussions and also brilliant ideas on the way forward, how this can be done and how we can engage the diaspora. But for this to happen, I think at the country level, we need to create an important framework that allow the participation of the diaspora. And because too often, when it comes to not only the political, but also the legal aspect, we realize that there is a void, and this should be done in terms of a regulatory framework to attract, but at the same time to facilitate the participation of the diaspora in this process. A number of ways that can be done in terms of formalizing this interaction, I believe is a way to go. We have seen ways of creating some mechanism to attract the diaspora investment in the development process. As FAO, we strongly believe that there is an area where there is a huge opportunity for the diaspora, which is agriculture. This is one sector that we see the diaspora is shying away in terms of investment. But as you know, we have a continent to feed. The opportunities in agriculture are immense, not only in crop, but livestock, I would say forestry, as well as fisheries. We have a number of opportunities for diaspora to see in agriculture as the sector to invest. We know that agriculture is a risky business. We know that there are limitations in terms of the barriers, given still the challenge that we have when it comes to access to energy, the roads. But agriculture is definitely an area where we believe that the diaspora should look in terms of bringing their investments. For us, what is important is then how we package the information, so the diaspora know where to invest, what value chains are more important, what nodes within the value chain is worth for the diaspora to bring their resource and to invest and have the return on their investment. But this is the role of the institution. I believe that we, as development partners, working with the government, we can truly work in packing the information and attracting the diaspora so they can invest in ways that agriculture become a sector where they can make money and also at the same time support the sustainable development of the country. Thank you.
Thank you. So we heard about trust issues. We heard about engagement of the diaspora in our efforts on SDGs, so diaspora engagement, diaspora participation, diaspora consultation, we heard about that. We also heard about ways that we can think about attracting diaspora investments, and in particular in agriculture. One element, two elements that I see in this framework. One issue is for a diaspora member who has gone out of the country and gone to, you might say, greener pasture, but it's not always greener, it's grayer and more dry and more boring sometimes. Gone out there, but they're earning a lot. And after a lifetime of being there, if they want to come back, there is an interesting question. How do you encourage sustainable return of people, of the diaspora? And you get into this problem that the diaspora members want to come home, and then in Africa, for example, or in India, I'm from India, they would say, I won't work with you under the working conditions you have. I'm special, you have to give me more money. Otherwise, I won't work with you. And what is interesting is that there is also a view that if you have migrants in host countries, it is okay to pay them less. So you have a very interesting situation. You have the migrant guy, think about a Nobel laureate or that caliber person or a doctor. They're all underpaid in their host countries. They're all underpaid in their host countries. But when they want to think back about their own country, they want to be overpaid. And rightly so, perhaps, because they're taking a pay cut. So there is that really intractable issue of how do you compensate the diaspora. So there is that issue. And there is definitely a group of people in the diaspora. They're thinking about the world, they're thinking about the country of origin, they're thinking about climate change, they're thinking about their children. They're more aware of some of these global challenges that we are facing. So perhaps they could be our champions as well. So they are two related issues. Any thoughts? I mean, I know we are veering off the script here a bit, but any thoughts on what can we do to encourage not only diaspora investments, but also more diaspora to come back home to engage, mentorship, regular return, virtual return? Any thoughts on that? I mean, the virtual return part seems so much more achievable now than before COVID, right? BC, as my friend said, BC, before COVID, and there is after COVID, sorry. So anyone, please, Dr. Shem, yeah.
Thank you. Allow me, Dilip, just to add, if you may, on that aspect of needs and wants. 2 years ago, in collaboration with the University of North Carolina, we did a survey, probably the first ever Kenyan comprehensive survey on diaspora requirements. One question was, if the Kenya government today said, what single most important thing, if we did to you, would make you feel belonging? 1,000 of them were responsive in the sense that they were good quality answers. 6% of them said, we want our investments in Kenya protected if we're going to invest more. 8% said, we don't want to pay petty bribes for public service, governance issues. The bulk majority of them, 52%, said, we want to be able to elect our leaders. So even though we put that point aside, it's key. And I must recognize that in Kenya, in the past, when we have had turbulence, diaspora working with the UN agencies and the diplomatic community and the private sector and the religious community have been able to bring resemblance of sanity. Without belaboring too much in that regard, in terms of attracting them back, and I'm glad Brother Antonio talks about agri-sector. As Kenya Diaspora Alliance, we already have formal partnerships or semi-partnerships with 10 county governments. In one county, you already have a banana plant with 10 different products coming out, some already being exported.
From the same plant?
Yes, from just banana, 10 different things.
Bad joke.
Thank you. Thank you. And from another county government, we are in the dairy planning business as a value chain to be promoted. In a third one, and the first one is Kisii for those conversant with Kenya. Kakamega County is the second dairy. And for Nanyuki, we're exploring a pyrethrum plant run by diasporas from the US. So that's one area where we think diaspora can be a lot more involved. But above all else, let's make them feel welcome. This is why we often say we appreciate the Indian example, the Filipino example, and others that have laid the red carpet for diasporas to come back home. The $4.2 billion that Kenyan diaspora bring that the governor and Kenya government representatives spoke about before, we believe is only 5 or 10% of the capacity of diasporas to invest back home. So we're happy we're seeing a journey. In the case of Kenya, government has recently created a ministry, at least a state department. We're still asking for more. We hope one day we get a full ministry because we think diaspora deserve that. But we're looking forward to more happening and working with other key partners. I think that's what I would add. Thanks.
Thank you. I remember that somewhere around 15 years ago, there were only 4 odd countries that has a diaspora ministry. And by now, I think the number is more like 60 odd countries. 60 odd countries have a diaspora ministry or a dedicated department to deal with the diaspora. Very good point you brought out about diaspora engagement. And on trust issues, of course, you know, and this is also the points that you mentioned about diaspora participation and consultations. If the diaspora became the diaspora because they did not like the government or the rulers went after them, then you have a problem. So that also leads to a trust issue. So there are those realities as well in many countries. But it is very clear that I think both the speakers, all three of you have mentioned that issue. Consultations with the diaspora and providing a platform would be the way to engage with them in a very systematic way. Any further thoughts on the trust issue, on the diaspora platform, what you have in mind, and also for you from Antonio, for agriculture sector, that's a hard one to bring people in because a lot of people move from rural to urban, and in fact there is established literature that when a diaspora want to return, they might have gone from the village, but they want to return to the city. At least they want to be near an airport, and airports are never near the village, as you know. So there is a very important point there.
We want to entice the diaspora to look at agriculture as a business. Agriculture where you can make money and you can get a good return on your investment. We want our diaspora to do an agriculture that is different that their parents and grandparents did. So I think for us is then how we partner with the diaspora organizations to look at skills enhancement, to look at opportunities within certain value chains that make sense. Because of course, it's not all value chains that you can make money. You need scale, you need proper skills. So the work that we can do with the diaspora is then how we strengthen their capacity. The diaspora organizations, the networks that exist, how they can also exchange the information, copy what is good, ideas, and look at ways to invest in agriculture sector. But we see a number of other opportunities within key sectors. Most of our economies in Africa are nature-based economies. So tourism provides a huge opportunity as well for diaspora to come home and to invest. Within agriculture, as I've mentioned, is not only crop, a huge potential when it comes to livestock, huge potential for fisheries and aquaculture, huge potential on forestry, not only I would like to discourage any deforestation, but to look at commercial forestry as an opportunity for us to invest in timber and to add value in timber as well. But also, we have a number of opportunities when it comes to non-wood forest products that we see opportunities for diaspora to come to invest. For this, information is critical. Skills are important. So whenever anyone comes home to invest, they put their money in the right place and have the right return. We, as FAO, we want to push, the process beyond small projects. We agree that you cannot continue to push development with these tiny projects here and there. So changes is needed when it comes to financing. Opportunities in this particular sector when it comes to agriculture finances is important for the transformation that we want to see and for the need for us to feed this continent that soon will be 2 billion. So the agriculture is definitely a way forward. I'm pitching for the diaspora here, but the opportunities are immense in this sector.
Actually, you reminded me just now that the wine industry from South Africa, wine industry in Chile, even the California wine, that industry was very much influenced by the diaspora or the migrants. Chile Global was an initiative that was supported by actually some of the multilateral institutions. And Chilean wine is one of the outputs that you tangibly see. Any thoughts from you, Alessandra, on the platform work that you are doing? And I really think that a systematic way of bringing the diaspora members and from that somehow taking out in an in a more balanced way, less unbiased way, what their real attitude is about engaging with their home country or specific projects is very, very important. So any further things you want to highlight there, please?
Yes, thank you. I actually love going off script, and it made me think, what would attract me back to my own country. I'm an international displaced person, so I'm not a diaspora per se, by definition, but obviously I've been living abroad for the majority of my life. But it's not about me now. I think the one single thing that I think diaspora would need to be attracted back is explicit political recognition of the value that they bring to sustainable development in their home countries. And with the explicit political recognition that then is translated in a series of framework policies, etc., also the existence and the goodwill to engage with the diaspora. Obviously, we do not know, at least in Africa, we do not know exactly what would attract diaspora back. This is homework that we need to do. We need to understand what kind of policies, what kind of framework, what kind of mechanism that needs to be put in place to attract them back. But for me, apart from the explicit political recognition of their value and the engagement at the political level with the diaspora, is also pathways for investments, and is what Antonio was actually saying. If I am living abroad for the majority of my life, I need to understand and I need clear guidance in terms of where can I be, more effective, where can I invest also for my own return, but also for the return of my community. Which ones are the pathways for investment for diaspora? And there are a number of mechanisms that I can, share with you in terms of how we can do that.
Thank you. I think we have time for maybe one question from the audience. I see one hand there, 2 hands, 3 hands. Okay, great. No more chance for anybody else. 1, 2, 3. That's how I saw it, so that's how I'm going to decide to do it. Over to you, sir. And perhaps you could use the microphone somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, quickly. I think there's a lot of focus on the return, but a great majority of the diaspora are more useful staying put where they are. And building the communities where they are and the institutions where they live. And what are the international or your respective organizations doing to strengthen the institutional capacity of diaspora organizations, as well as build the capacity of the community to be able to support those who are going back, but also their families and others, and investing in other ways? Thank you.
So how to strengthen diaspora institutions? That was the point, right? We'll take the 3 questions and then we will respond. Yes.
My name is Isaac Moretti, and my question is directed towards Mr. Antonio. Speaking on agriculture, what is your perspective on agricultural real estate investment trusts, considering the successful implementation of index-based weather risk management programs in the insurance sector that have adopted a systemic approach to financial inclusion? Furthermore, how can we design these agricultural rates in a manner that facilitates diaspora investments and fosters sustainable development across all countries? Thank you.
It's like the whole question, we have to start all over again. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank our panelists, all of them. My names are Captain Joshua Adem, and I would like to direct my question to the President, Mr. Honorable Shem. I thank you very much, first of all, that through your efforts, we have a diaspora desk within the ministry. Out of that, now I would like to understand here from where the desk is seated. Is there any framework, because we have seen our diasporans, others coming back without their remittances due to their employers. So is there a framework that can help those who have returned but the remittance have not been reached to their home countries? What do you do, or what has been put in place to cover that area? Thank you.
So you are kind of talking about wage theft, is that correct?
Exactly, yes.
Very good point. During COVID-19, we saw a lot of that. Every time there is a crisis, the employers are facing crisis, and they don't honor the payments and benefits that they owe to the migrant workers. So we have the question of how to strengthen diaspora institutions so that their engagement can be enhanced, and then the question about wage theft, how to avoid that, and a broad question about how diasporas can promote financial inclusion and investment back home. Is that succinct enough?
Yeah, via agricultural rates.
Yeah, thank you. So it's fine, whatever you can take, because we have 5 minutes, and let's, who you want to go first?
I would like to say on the first point, we as FAO, we have formalized an agreement with Ugandan Diaspora Agribusiness Network, providing the support for the network, but also what we have done in Uganda is to promote the role models. Those that have invested in agriculture, diaspora that have succeeded, we have created an award recognizing the diaspora that has come home and invest in agriculture. And through the network, for them to spread information and for others to learn and to see that it's possible. We provide also the support in terms of designing a strategy for the diaspora to return to Uganda and invest in agribusiness. But we are working with this institution for them to understand what it takes to create an agribusiness, what it takes to manage an agribusiness, but what it takes also to sustain it in the long run. So we know that you have the resource, but when it comes to a specific sector like agriculture, you need more. You need the skills to sustain your business. We believe as a UN, we have the opportunities for this collaboration to strengthen this diaspora institution for the right investment. I think the same when it comes to how we can leverage the investments that exist at the country level in agriculture sector. As you know, this is a sector that remains invested. Most countries in our continent has not lived up to the agreement in Malabo to put 10% of their budget into agriculture sector. So we still have the deficit. We know that is a sector that the banking that are with us, they are risk averse when it comes to agriculture. But we need to work with diaspora to create this space, but also to continue to put some pressure with the policymakers. So more resources can come to agriculture sector. So projects that are designed also have the finances that is needed for them to succeed.
Thank you. You want to go next and then
Thank you very much. From the perspective of the Kenya Diaspora Alliance, and thanks, Captain, we work with various partners closely. IOM, I'm glad to see Chief of Mission here. GIZ, we do. With government, earlier on, the Investment Secretary talked of a task force for diaspora investments. We sufficiently represented there, but of course, we would want more diasporas to participate, even virtually, if they can contribute to the agenda of developing the country. The cooperative sector, we're working again in a number of areas to rally diasporas in the cooperative, not to mention mining sector. A lot of African assets are underground, but I won't delve much more into that, other than saying in terms of facilitating diaspora organizing and capacity development, there is no single size fits all. I was talking to the DG Ethiopia Diaspora Agency. Government is facilitating diasporas coming together. That's one way to get it done. In the case of Kenya, 56 of our diaspora associations constitute the Kenya Diaspora Alliance. So that was like diaspora driven. Rwanda Diaspora Global Network, government supports, but diaspora play a role. So there are a number of ways. We're trying to escalate this now to an African diaspora level stage. I don't want to, I'm shy to call them umbrella diaspora bodies, but federations that bring those like-minded diasporas to work together. I know we meant to be meeting in Jamaica in 2 years' time. That's the Global African Diaspora. Historical diasporas, we often talk about contemporary diasporas, but that's another sleeping giant that we are to unlock. Maybe finally, just to mention that even though we do the micro projects, we're also involved in the big projects. Kenyans in Washington, D.C. are currently working on a diaspora food security bond, $10 billion, building upon what President Abraham Lincoln did in 1862 when the U.S. had a food deficit. Recognizing that for us to talk of transformation and development, a hungry tummy cannot listen to transformation and all. So the issue of food security is key. But again, for more details, we already have platforms, technology-driven platforms that we are happy to share with others at our booth, the Diaspora Portal, ranging from the Diaspora Database to other platforms like the iVote for diaspora to securely vote, blockchain-driven. Many may not be aware that 25 years ago exactly, diasporas brought internet into Africa. So there are a few things diaspora can have done, and they can do more if the environment is right. But again, as we said, being the last, I know people are also tired. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you.
So how to support diaspora institutions? I take this one. 3 things. The first one is about creating capacity at home, like, for example, creating a focal point in local governments that are able to interact with diaspora back in countries of destinations. Number 2, creating platforms for engagement, for example, like we did in Moldova with the hometown associations that create a space for engagement with diaspora in countries of destinations and communities back home. And number 3, I go back to the investment pathways, and I want to mention the integrated national financing framework that UNDP rolls out in 30 countries in Africa is an instrument that actually allows to identify potentials for investments in specific sector by diaspora, and particularly through remittances, identify specific funding mechanism, like, for example, diaspora bonds or investment bonds or different investment packages. And number 3, through what we call the SDGs, sorry, not the MDGs, but the SDGs investor maps, we are able to actually land on specific sectors that are linked to the SDGs where diaspora can invest, for example, in agriculture, food security, water, and renewable energy. Thank you.
Thank you. So, waste theft, we did not address that, but it is really an important issue. And ILO has a major role. They are aware of it. Civil society really has a huge role in preventing wage theft. And embassies abroad, they have a huge role as well. But there has to be some mechanism to collect grievances and get the information and somehow address this issue. That's very, very important. On the question of capacity building for or strengthening diaspora institutions, it remains a challenge, and this is the problem of scaling up diaspora engagement. Sometimes diaspora members are spread out too thin all over the place, and different people have different personal interests, vested interests, so to say, but personal interests, that's the right thing to do. And bringing them together towards one common cause is difficult unless it is a sort of a common challenge that they are facing. And there, the interesting thing is that when you do a diaspora consultation or focus group meeting, from people who are in their 50s, 60s, who left their country even 30 years ago, 40 years ago, people, 50-year-old, 60-year-old, 70-year-old, start crying when they start thinking about their home country. And if somebody asks, how can you help your country? They say, I really want to help, I just don't know how. And you see tears coming out. Every time I have done a diaspora focus group meeting, you start with a 2-hour time zone, 2-hour time period, it goes into 4 hours. There is a very, very emotional engagement, and I think we can take advantage of that. So with that, this question of trust, I just remembered that there is this whole thing about reverse trust. So 20 years ago, I started working on remittances, and I remembered at that time, one of the first presentations, a joke I had heard when I was actually in college. It's a college level joke. The postmaster of a country, the postmaster general of a country once received a letter during Christmas time, and the letter was addressed to God, post office heaven. Of course, it landed with the postmaster, and he opened the letter out of curiosity, and it says, Dear God, you are kind, I am poor, I have a family, I want to feed my children during Christmas. Can you send me $200? The postmaster really was moved, so he sent $200 to the person. $100 to the person. He sent $100 to the person. And then January, he comes back from vacation. There is another letter to God, Post Office 7. He opens the letter. Dear God, you are very kind. You must have said $200. The postmaster took the rest. I think there is a huge trust issue on the other side, a capacity building also in the other side. I don't think we have time for more questions. So I do want to add to the capacity building of diaspora organizations, engagement in the local level, so you need focal points in the local level, local governments, at the provincial government, at the central government. I would also add one element. I think you need to build capacity in the multilateral institutions. You need to create those departments of migrants, refugees, remittances, and diasporas in all the IFIs. Thank you. Thank you very much.